Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The perfect preseason is over. The Browns roster has been cut to 53, and only three are quarterbacks. A kicker change has been made, and 12 rookies were kept on the initial 53-man roster. Here to discuss a busy week in Brownstown, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. What's going on, Chud?
Let's go. Here we go. How many goes can I say? Yes, Scott, we have made it. And I'm a broken record. I say it every year, but it's nice that you won't have your Labor Day weekend ruined by having to worry about roster cuts because the new system, they do it this way.
Dude, I was telling my wife about that yesterday, how it used to be a Labor Day weekend thing. I remember being at wedding in a hotel room taking a conference call with Tom Heckert. Like, this is so much easier. And then you get a little break, and then week one, it's around the corner.
Yeah, for me, it was always in the sports department. Family tradition is the Canfield Fair. And when I was in sports, I would work a lot of days over Labor Day weekend. I'd get one day or maybe two off, whatever. But I would remember racing home on Saturday to, get all the cuts and get it on the air Saturday. And then knowing that, the next week was the game. But obviously my life's completely changed because I'm
Right.
not even in the sports department anymore. But needless to say, here we are. How close was your 53 to what it ended up being?
Yeah, probably not as close as it should have been. Um, I mean, we'll get into it. We'll talk the Pickett trade. So, you know, obviously I had that wrong. I thought we'll get into all this stuff. I thought they
Yeah.
would keep Deontay Johnson. I wasn't sure about that, but I kind of thought they'd invested time. Maybe they'd want to see how he'd look in the regular season. I picked the wrong four safety. I think I did the wrong fifth corner. I think I had to check. But I mean, it was, it's everybody on the margins. Um, they only kept two running backs, which I thought was a possibility, but it's also when you do one of those exercises, it's like, well, they're going to have three running backs, so I feel like you should have a third one on there, even though, I could have left just question marks, like it's going to be a different guy is a third running back. So, it's not a perfect science when you do this thing, but I enjoy it. I think people enjoy it, and it gives you a kind of a way to crystallize your thoughts on the roster before, it gets cut down to 53. So I would say it was pretty close, but maybe not as close as I should have been.
Yeah, and it could change, right? Between
Yeah.
now and the first game, right, Scott?
Oh, it will change, Chud.
Yeah.
We're taping this on Wednesday morning, so waiver claims are due in by noon, or I think the Browns find out at noon if they get anybody off waiver claims, and then they have to make a corresponding move by 4 p.m. So let's say they claimed, I mean, they can claim as many guys as they want. Let's say they claimed three guys, and they were awarded three guys because they're number two on the priority list. So it's the same as the draft order. So it's Tennessee number one, Cleveland number two. Let's say they put in a claim for three guys, they get all three, then they have to decide who they're going to cut to clear up those three spots. They're certainly going to add a running back. I would think to the 53. I don't think it'll just be on the practice squad because now they only have two running backs. As we're taping this, it's Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Let's assume they add a running back. Could they swap out that last corner or even add another corner? Yeah, that's an area that I think is a little light. They're still feeling the effects of Martin Emerson Jr.'s season-ending Achilles tear and trying to figure out what they're going to do at corner. So running back, corner, maybe even linebacker. I mean, Andrew Berry said during the last broadcast that, the way the practice squad's set up now, there's way more flexibility in promoting guys to the game day roster. So you can maybe save a spot at linebacker, but, Winston Reed starts the season on injured reserve, designated return. Mahmoud Diabate is still not practicing with an injury. So, I think running back, corner, and linebacker jump out to me as the spots that are most likely to be addressed through waiver claims.
Yeah. Scott, let's just hit the quarterbacks real quick here.
Yep.
And, we knew Flacco was going to be the starter. And I'm not completely shocked Gabriel is number two just because of, they drafted him in the third round. It's clear they love the guy. They've wanted him to succeed. They want to see what they have there. I've always kind of felt Gabriel would be ahead of Shedeur to start. So I'm not surprised the pecking order goes the way it does. But I will say this. I wasn't sure, and anyone that says they knew or didn't, or anyone who said they knew they were going to keep 4 at 3, I don't think anyone could have known for sure. Do you agree with that? I mean, I think there was a chance they could have kept 4, but I'm not shocked they kept 3. But I will say this. I didn't think Pickett would be traded. I am a little shocked by that. That was, I don't get shocked by a lot, but sometimes there are things that one kind of surprised me, especially for the return. I just didn't think it was that much, really.
Yeah, I mean, they got a 5th-round pick back from the Raiders. And here's how I would break it down, Chud. If they were going to keep Pickett, then they were going to keep 4 quarterbacks. They weren't going to cut or trade one of the rookies. Now, if somebody blew them away with an offer for Shedeur Sanders, then they might have traded him, I suppose, if somebody offered a 2nd-round pick. That wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to trade Dillon Gabriel, and they weren't going to get an offer for Dillon Gabriel. So it all came down to whether or not Kenny Pickett was on this roster. And I felt for the vast majority of training camp in the preseason, they were leaning toward keeping Kenny Pickett. And something changed late. And 2 things changed. The Raiders lost Aiden O'Connell to a broken wrist and needed a backup quarterback for Geno Smith and put them in the market for a quarterback like Kenny Pickett. So that made a trade option possible and available. The other half is Dillon Gabriel needed to show that he was capable of being the number 2 quarterback on opening day. And the way he played against the Eagles and the way he played against the Rams, I think proved to Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry that, yeah, he's ready to go. And maybe he's as good as Kenny Pickett would have been. Now, we can argue whether that's true. We can argue that if something happens to Joe Flacco September 7th against the Bengals, is Dillon Gabriel really going to be ready? And will he, because preseason and regular season are different animals. And I got to flash back to 2023. They traded Joshua Dobbs, who was set to be the number 2 to Deshaun Watson. Week 4, Deshaun Watson doesn't play with the shoulder injury, and DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, is thrust into duty and is overmatched. And the Browns quickly realized that he wasn't ready to start, and that began P.J. Walker, and then it wound up becoming Joe Flacco in 2023. So this feels similar in a lot of instances. Like they traded Dobbs for a 5th-round pick. He was going to be the number 2. Pickett was going to be the number 2. The differences, to me, are the Browns they must, in my opinion, feel better about Gabriel than they did even about DTR. And that I'm sure they flash back to that and say, okay, are we in the same spot or not? And I think Gabriel, given his 6 years in college, given the fact that they like him, given his, his smarts and his good decision-making and how he played the last 2 weeks, I think they feel like he can be that number 2 and they're not really missing out by trading Kenny Pickett. They think the 5th-round pick is a valuable asset. I don't think it's that valuable. I think I'm more conservative than Andrew Berry in the aspect that I would want a veteran in place to back up Joe Flacco week 1. But they obviously feel different. But I think what changed is they get a trade offer. I don't think they're just cutting Pickett, but they get a trade offer they think is worthy. And then Gabriel shows them enough to say, yeah, I can be that number 2 guy.
Scott, let's backtrack for a second. Pickett came before of the 4 quarterbacks. Refresh my memory now because it's been Pickett came first, right? I mean, they had Pickett before the draft.
They traded for him like at the start of free agency.
Yeah. Okay. So you had Pickett. So Pickett, and I think this is sometimes maybe we try to analyze and think these guys know what they're doing or because it's their job, but they're just human beings who obviously we've seen, especially in Cleveland, make mistakes. I think this is maybe what happened is they get Pickett and they're like, yeah, you know what? We could give this guy a chance. We like what he could possibly do. Maybe he could be that guy that surprises and, as you've mentioned many times, gets a second chance and develops. But then they have Flacco and they draft 2 quarterbacks and they're like, wow, we have Gabriel, a guy we really like, And then we just kind of came into Shador. Now we have all these quarterbacks, and then the guy gets hurt. So Pickett can't really prove that he's the guy in training camp. And then if they let one of these rookies go, then they look stupid if one of them is successful and they keep Pickett and he's not. And like you said, maybe they are like, well, we really can't keep 4. Like maybe they just got to a point where it was like, listen, we're going to try to win games early with Flacco. But if something goes wrong with him, we just need to see what we have in these rookies. So what does Pickett do for us anyway? Let's just go get something for him. We'll get a 5th-round pick, and there you go. Maybe it's as simple as that.
I think there's 2 really good points there, Chud. The last one you made is, I think, valid. That, hey, we want to eventually see these rookies. So does it matter if it's week 1 or 2 or 7? Do we really need that bridge of Kenny Pickett? I think that's legitimate. Now, I do think it factors in that Gabriel played well. Because I don't think the Browns are ready to punt this season if Joe Flacco pulls a hamstring or whatever happens week 1. If they didn't think Gabriel were up to the task, I don't think they trade Pickett. But I think if you combine it, hey, if we need to see these rookies early, that's fine, right? They're fine with that, given the 2 number 1 picks next year, all that. So I think that's a really good point. And I think the hamstring is a good thing you mentioned, Chud, because who knows how the quarterback competition would have played out. I think Joe Flacco still would have won it. I think Joe Flacco is a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett and gives you a better chance to win week 1. But if you believe what the Browns said and how they liked the start that Pickett had to training camp and they liked him throughout the offseason, they liked his mobility, I don't think it was a foregone conclusion that Flacco is going to beat out Pickett. So not only does he lose out in the competition because of the pulled hamstring or the whatever hamstring, injured hamstring, he doesn't get a chance to show that he should be the number 2. So it's just wasted time, wasted opportunity or missed opportunity for Pickett. And they can say, hey, we didn't get to see him play in the preseason. We don't know what he is. So, let's jump on this 5th-round draft pick. I think that's a huge point in this.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, for a franchise struggling to find its guy, you'd give them up like that. But hey, bottom line is they did, and I will say this: I don't dislike Gabriel. I am not in Bree every day like you guys are, the beat writers, the people that follow him every day. But just in the aspect of what he did in college, and I've never been the one that's thought he can't be the guy. I feel like he deserves a shot, but maybe they drafted him too high. You could argue that, okay. But I will counter with this, though. I mean, Scott, 2 preseason games, 1 game where no starters played. I mean, really, can you take a lot from that to feel confident that he can be your backup quarterback in those 2 games?
Well, I mean, it's a legitimate question, Chud. But what Kevin Stefanski would tell you is it's not all about those 2 preseason games. It's about everything they've seen from Dylan Gabriel, from the college film they watched to when they met with him before the draft. They worked him out in Oregon. I think it was Oregon. They worked him out somewhere before the draft. To when he got here for rookie minicamp, all of it is, it's this total evaluation. So it's not just those 2 games. I think those 2 games confirm what they thought about Gabriel. And they always liked his decision-making. They always liked his accuracy. He's 24, so he should be ready to go, even though Tyler Shuck in New Orleans isn't getting the start. He's, 26 or 27. So I think this was always their hope. But I would say the 2 preseason games were the last piece of it that said, okay, he is ready. He looked really good in that 2-minute drill. And I get it, right? It's against the Rams backups, and hardly any of those guys even made the Rams 53-man roster. But he still went out and did it. It's better than if he didn't do it. So your point is legit. It's not just about those preseason games. The concern for me, and we talked about this on these pods, Chud, is there was a section of training camp where Dylan Gabriel looked bad. And it was mostly accuracy issues. Like, it felt like he was making the right read and making the right decision. He's just missing targets. And, execution matters. But when you're grading it on film, as a coach, you go, okay, well, he did this right, he did this right, he missed a throw. So at least you can feel a comfort level where he's going with the right place with the ball, as opposed to, man, this guy doesn't see the open receiver. So when you got to the game, Gabriel's accuracy was way better than it had been in that stretch of practices. That wasn't every practice, and it wasn't all of every practice, but there were stretches where he just threw it poorly. I thought he got better as camp went on, and then I thought he really threw it well in those two games. And if you already trusted his decision making, then that's what you needed to see. So, and I asked him about that after the game, after the Saturday game. I said, did you feel like you struggled in those training camp practices when I thought you did and everybody else thought you did? And he gives these big, like, philosophical coach answers. Oh, it's all about improvement and linear, and improvement's not linear and whatever. But then he finally goes, to answer your question, no. He goes, I kept thinking I was improving every day, and I wasn't getting bogged down in, to paraphrase, some missed throws. So for me, it was, can he get past that poor stretch? And I thought he did with the preseason games.
That's some really good insight there on that. You make a lot of great points. And Shedeur makes the roster. I'm not surprised. You're not surprised by that, are you?
Oh my gosh, no. And
yeah,
no,
right.
No, and somebody was asking Shedeur. I was not at the initial Shedeur wave in the locker room Saturday. I was talking to Joe Flacco. And then he did a second wave, and I was catching part of that. But then, we get the transcripts and you read the interview, and he kept getting asked about making the team. And I'm like, who thinks he's not making the team? So then I checked with somebody. I'm like, Shedeur's making the team, right? And he's like, of course, those are crazy questions. So he was always going to make the team. They weren't going to trade up to draft him in the 5th round, put up with everything that goes with Shedeur, haven't played well in one preseason game. I know he didn't play well against the Rams, but he played well against Carolina. I thought he looked good throughout training camp, and then cut him when you get to, August 26th. Like, that was never going to happen. He was going to be on this roster.
Yeah. And yeah, no surprise. But there is 2 things I want to bring up. Well, no, 3 things with Shedeur. Let's go in this order. All right. So he took 5 sacks.
Yeah.
I don't need to ask you how you think he played. I think we know. But how do you feel about him not getting to get in on that final drive, the 2-minute drive? And also there is that feeling out there that Stefanski is sabotaging Shedeur. Your thoughts on that? You are on the clock, Petrak.
Wow. Geez, we could do a whole pod on this. So I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Looked terrible. He didn't get great protection, reverted to things he did in Colorado. That was the troubling part. Drifted back, tried to make huge plays instead of getting the ball out of his hand. Took a 24-yard sack when they started the drive right near midfield. Ran out of bounds twice for sacks, Chud, which I don't understand. Throw the ball away, and you save yourself a sack. You save your offensive line a sack, and you save however many yards. I think one was 4 and one was 2.5. Just throw it away. Throw it out of bounds. So those things were not good signs. Doesn't mean he can't be a good player. Doesn't mean all the stuff he did earlier in camp is for naught. But he just had a rough stretch. I would have let him go out for the 2-minute drill. I think Stefanski talks so much about situations, and you want to see a guy in this spot. That was a perfect chance to let Shedeur Sanders try to go win a game while operating in your 2-minute drill. So I didn't understand that. The only explanation that I would buy is they thought Tyler Huntley gave them the best chance to get in position for Andre Schmidt to kick the winning field goal, and they wanted to see if he could kick the winning field goal because they were going to cut Dustin Hopkins. And that wound up happening. Now, Stefanski got asked about that Tuesday and said, I'm not that good. Now, he could just be deflecting, but if that was the thought that, hey, we want to see this kid kick the winning field goal and Shedeur's going backwards, so let's go with Huntley, then it worked out and good for them. I still would have given Shedeur Sanders a shot because he's your future. I think part of it might be throwing Tyler Huntley a bone because, they brought him in here at the last minute and he's, they really like him and he's a good mentor and all that stuff. But Sanders could be your future. Let's see if he could go and won the game.
Okay, well, let me counter that with this though. He could be your future. Like him hurt and me drive after he played terrible anyway. And
Yeah.
what if he plays even worse in that final drive? Maybe Stefanski backlash.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get that, but I mean, it was already a lost day for him. This was a chance to save it. I think if he goes 3 and out with another sack on the last drive, I don't think that changes anybody's perception of Sanders. He was an offer against the Rams. He still would have been an offer. So I would have played him. And the sabotage thing, that's what you asked me earlier too, Chad. I struggle with the idea of even
Yeah.
writing or talking about that because it's ridiculous. To me, it's a ridiculous concept that that Kevin Stefanski or this organization is sabotaging Shadur Sanders. They traded up to draft him. All eyes are on him. It doesn't make any sense for them to do that. So I don't even like giving that oxygen. But the other day, Stefanski got asked about it and gave the answer, and I debated whether or not I should even write it or put a headline on it. And I went with it was my lead note, and I put a headline on it because I thought at least Stefanski should get the chance to respond to this lunacy. And he did, and he said, I'm committed to everybody's development, blah, blah, blah. I don't pay attention to that, which was the right answer. There's no way that they're trying to sabotage him. It doesn't make any sense. I'm glad we addressed it, but people should not even give that any kind of credence.
Yeah, Scott, I just think the whole Shador thing, especially a lot of the headlines and the things you see in the national media, it's definitely been interesting. And I don't know. It's just whether it's clickbait or people just want their voices to be heard. But we'll see how it plays out. But two more points that I wanted to bring up. One was how did you feel about his reaction of wanting to stay in?
Yeah, it was a little much. Um, And it wasn't just after he wasn't going in for the 2 minute drill that got the most attention. And he walked like to the pylon and up to Stefanski, and he said he was trying to focus, so he didn't even know that he wasn't going to be in the game. But I had binoculars on him after a couple of the other drives, Chud. In one, he sat with his head down, buried in the tablet, looking at the plays. And then the other one, he walks out the field and he just squats like real close to the sideline and was staring at the ground, and guys were coming up to him trying to like give him a little pep talk, keep your chin up kind of thing. And usually the quarterback always goes to the bench. They look at the tablet, they talk to the coach, and he was just like by himself squatting. It was kind of weird. It felt like he didn't keep the even keel that I think they would probably want him to keep. Not that you can't be upset about playing poorly, but it was a lot of emotion, a lot of reaction, and I think he needs to ride those waves better, and that includes not being out there for that 2 minute drive.
Yeah. How do you feel? We didn't address this in the last pod. Maybe we should have, maybe not. But the comments that Gabriel made, and
Oh,
then
okay.
that took off that people thought he was talking about Shador. Is there any issue between these two guys at all?
I don't think so. I think it's I mean, I'm not in that locker room. We haven't been in there yet. We start next week. We get to go back in the locker room. So, we're only seeing these guys either on the field or in these interview settings. I think they get along. I think there is a competition there. I think that's natural when you're drafted in the same class at the same position. I thought when Gabriel said it, my ears did perk up, and I thought, man, is he taking a shot at Shadur? And then you hear the explanation, and I think it's completely believable. Is that that's just how he refers to the media? I don't know if I should be offended by that or not, but I don't think it was a shot at Shadur. I don't think Shadur took it as a shot. Um, but that's kind of what comes with having Shadur Sanders, and the Browns have to be. I know they were aware of that when they drafted him, but that's something you have to handle, and the players have to handle, and Gabriel has to handle. If there's a little, bubble that comes up because you said something, that's part of this Shadur experience. And I think Gabriel, quashed it pretty quickly. I don't, so I don't think he meant it. But I understand why it got the reaction it did on social media, because my first thought was, I wonder if he's talking about Shadur.
Well, this was a big miss on my part. And I meant to bring it up on two different pods, but I always kind of just left it out because we had so much to talk about. And, at some point, you got to call it a day.
Right.
But I think we kind of missed the boat. We have not really addressed the kicker situation, Scott.
Right.
And the last week I was sitting there going, man, I think we should have been talking about this. And we hadn't. And I think that's a big headline here in these roster cuts is what happened at kicker.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chud. It was certainly my headline from the roster cuts yesterday. And yeah, that's not crazy that we didn't, that you're right, that we probably should have brought it up. I didn't spend a ton of time writing about it in camp. I did ask Stefanski after one game if he was ready to commit to Hopkins, and he wasn't. And I think that, kind of raised my eyebrows, because they wanted Dustin Hopkins to win this job. They signed him through 2027. It was a 3-year, $15.9 million extension before 2024 season, when he still had a year on his contract. And now, is it the end of the world that they're going to have to pay a kicker not to be here? No. But I think it's certainly a knock against Andrew Berry, or whoever's, Andrew Berry's got the final say. The fact that they gave this kicker a extension when it wasn't necessary, and it comes back to bite them. And they stuck with him longer than they would have last year, if due to the contract. They wanted him to win the job this year due to the contract. And the fact that he didn't win the job and that they cut him yesterday with this contract shows you how bad he had been, and how the struggles from 2024 carried over to the 2025 preseason. He missed 2 extra points. Last year, they gave him a week off during the end of the season just to try to help his mental state. And he didn't want it, but they felt like, guy keeps missing kicks, you got to try to fix him somehow. So they went through extraordinary measures with Dustin Hopkins. And I also say this, Judd, during training camp, we usually see kickers, there's field goal drills, right? And they line up, and I remember charting Cade York. Did he go 5 for 6? Did he go 6 for 6? Right? You watch him make kicks in practice in a quote-unquote live setting. I only remember one of those during all of training camp. So I think there was either a worry about Hopkins kicking in those situations, or kicking in front of the media, or whatever it was. It didn't feel natural, and it didn't feel normal. And then he misses 2 in the preseason, and they felt like they had no other choice. Now they're going to Andre Schmidt, and he's never kicked in a game. At least he has a game winner in the preseason finale. They like him. They think he's been consistent. But on a team that we expect, if they're going to win games, they're going to be close games, and it's going to be defense and low scoring and all those things. They're going in with a kicker with no NFL experience, and that's got to be unsettling to some degree.
Yeah. Will he be the guy, or do you think they're going to bring in someone else?
I think he's a guy, Chud, because they trotted him out in front of the media yesterday. And I don't think they do that if they plan on bringing in somebody else.
There you go. Good insight there. You brought up wide receiver. They cut 6 of them. Is that right?
Yes, 6, including DeAndre Carter, the returner. Yep.
Okay. So DeAndre, we talked about this last week, and I mentioned, we were talking about him. I thought that the Bond signing could cost Deontay, but I just felt like we talked about last week. Deontay just had a quiet camp, and I'm not completely surprised that he didn't make the team. Were you?
No, I'm not completely surprised. I felt like they had invested. I know that it was a no guaranteed money and the veteran minimum contract, so they weren't invested financially, but they brought him in, right? They had him here throughout camp. I felt like maybe they would extend this experiment into the regular season and give him a chance to see if you put him out there week 1, week 2, that he did some things and prove that he belonged. They must have thought it's not even worth it. Was he a pain behind the scenes? I think that's entirely possible, given what he went through last year, being traded and then suspended by the Ravens for not going into a game. It wasn't all about his physical ability. He could still get open. That was obvious. I think it goes much beyond that when you're deciding whether or not to keep Deontay Johnson. So, and I thought the last week, I think he could tell that he was in trouble. And you saw him picking guys up on the field. And, I thought it was a different Deontay Johnson. And I think it was because he's like, shoot, I got to try to impress and stick around and show that I'm worth keeping. And then they eventually decided not to keep him anyway. And that spot goes to, and I'm probably stepping on your segue, but goes to Gage Larvadain, undrafted rookie, had a really productive training camp, really productive preseason, caught a touchdown pass against the Rams, ran for a touchdown against the Panthers. Undersized guy, good story, spent some time at Miami of Ohio. I thought they still might go with Caden Davis ahead of Larvadain and get Larvadain on the practice squad, but they went the other way.
Yep, you were right. That was my follow-up. Well done.
Yep, 2 birds.
Sure. Yep. How about Huntington?
Yeah, he's one of those undrafted guys. So they kept 6 undrafted rookies. One of them's Isaiah Bond, so you got to kind of put an asterisk there because he would have been drafted if he didn't have the legal trouble. Huntington's great story. Spent some time at Kent State, bounced around colleges, kept trying to work his way up, finished at Tulane. He started the game Saturday at fullback, played on special teams, then had a sack and a half on defense. And he was one of those guys that you're watching training camp, and he always kind of was showing up. And he'd be getting these reps, and you'd be like, why is he getting these reps? And why is he on the number 1 kickoff team? And is this guy going to make the roster? And then Stefanski goes ahead and says it after the game Saturday. Yeah, he's got a roster spot. He's a really good story. I'm working on a story right now. Hopefully it's up at Brown Zone this afternoon. We talked to him yesterday, and he talked about, playing relentlessly. And Stefanski said his physical nature is how he winds up at fullback and winds up at special teams because the coaches see that, right? Bubba Ventrone sees that. The offensive coaches see his physicality on defense and say, hey, maybe we can use that. And he said the key is that he just never stops hustling, never stops running. It's something his dad taught him to do. And initially he's like, nah, I don't need to do that. And then once he did it, he's like, man, he goes, this really helps and it benefits and the coaches love it. So relentless player, showed up. He's a D tackle. He'll be part of that rotation, and this feeds into Mike Hall. Mike Hall Jr. gets activated from the PUP list yesterday. Didn't practice. I think it's still a question whether or not he's ready week 1. If he's not, then I think Huntington winds up being part of that rotation week 1. And maybe he's probably up anyway because he's on special teams, because you could use him as a fullback. So, he might even be in that defensive rotation regardless. But last point on him, Chud, he talked about how Myles Garrett in minicamp said, hey, I'm going to be working out in Dallas between minicamp and training camp if you want to come down and work out. And he took Garrett up on the offer, wound up staying with Garrett, and he worked out with Micah Parsons and Will Anderson and Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire from the Browns, and said, what a great experience it was for him. So that's cool in itself, right? Myles invites him. He goes down. He gets this great experience. But then he talked about how he wasn't sure if he wanted to go because he was going to work out at home in Virginia. He doesn't really know Myles that well. He's got to get on a plane. It's just an uncomfortable situation for him. And he said he had to put that aside and kind of face his fears to go do this and take advantage of this great opportunity, which he thinks helped him make this team. So I just like him. I just like listening to him talk about that and overcoming the fear. It's something I think just people can relate to. Am I going to do this? Am I going to go on this job interview? It's a little scary, things like that. Mm-hmm. And he said he did that when he went from Kent to Louisiana Monroe to Tulane. It was the same kind of thing where, hey, I'm in a comfort zone here, but I'm going to step out of it to try to better myself.
That really is a great story. That is good. Anything on roster cuts before I move on to the final topic?
The only thing, well, I don't know what your final topic is, but I got two things. Deshaun Watson is still on PUP. No surprise there. Must miss 4 games. Just given where they are at quarterback, given trading Kenny Pickett, do we ever see Deshaun Watson this year? I don't know. They're not ready to say. I don't know if you can rule it out. If you watch his Instagram videos, he's dropping back and he's throwing. Just worth noting that he's still here, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to play or not, but when we talk about the quarterbacks and take one more step back, that includes Deshaun Watson. And then the last thing is Quinshon Judkins, still not signed, doesn't count against the 53 because he's not signed. Who knows? Maybe we'll have something on that any day. As far as I know, there's been no movement to bring him in to get him signed. The league is still reviewing his case, and those are two separate things. The Browns can sign him even with the league reviewing his case. They might be waiting to sign him until there's resolution from the league, but they could sign him if the team and Judkins agreed to a deal.
Yeah, good call on that. I did forget about bringing up Judkins. I will admit I did think about bringing up Deshaun, but maybe more in just a joke. But it really isn't a joke. I mean, he's still around. There's no doubt. I got 2 more things. I just wanted you to hit on injuries. You got some big names, kind of ailing, and I just wanted to see where we're at on that.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good sign. Now, we didn't get to watch all of practice, and just because a guy's on the field for practice doesn't necessarily mean he's ready to play. But Denzel Ward and Cedric Tillman were back at practice Tuesday. So that's obviously a step in the right direction. They missed time the week before. Denzel's got a shoulder. Tillman had his thumb in a brace last week. So the fact that they're both back, Stefanski has expressed hope or optimism that Denzel will be ready to go week 1. It was a good sign that he was on the field yesterday. Hall, like I mentioned, I don't know if he'll be ready week 1. Backup tackle Cornelius Lucas continues to work on the side. They made a trade for a tackle yesterday, so they have some depth there. And then Ethan Posick, the center, went down with a knee against the Rams. That's the danger of playing your starters in the preseason. Stefanski said there's a chance he can play week 1. So I think this is going to be something that we have to get into next week, maybe even into next Thursday, Friday, before you know if Posick's going to play.
And Scott, the last thing I had is, preseason record means nothing, but yeah, it can kind of mean something. I mean, I think we got to give him a little bit of credit for going 3-0. And because we've seen so many 0-3s and bad records in the preseason, I mean, at least you get a little momentum. There's got to be something you can take from that, no?
I don't know. It's better than losing. There's no doubt about that. I'll give you that. I don't think the record matters. What I think matters, Chud, is I think the winning field goal matters. And I think how well the defense played throughout, whether it was starters or backups, I think that matters. And it carried over in the Eagles joint practice and the Panthers joint practice and out of training camp. I think the defense looked good throughout the preseason, and that includes training camp. I think that matters. And then individual stuff in the preseason matters. It's a 3-0. I don't know. I mean, it's better than losing. And how they got to some of those, right, with the rookie quarterbacks playing well. Shedeur against Carolina, Gabriel the last 2 games. So those are more of the things that I'm focused on than actually 3-0.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see what the Ravens do in the preseason, and it seems to work for them.
Yeah, I mean that is a valid point, right? They never lose in the preseason, and they're always good, right? And is there a causal relationship there? I don't know. The Rams. I mean, the Rams don't play any of their guys, right? And they're usually pretty good. So I don't know if it means something, but Kevin Stefanski will tell you that they're trying to win the game as long as they're keeping scores. Mm-hmm. So they did do that.
Yeah, no question. But I know that it really, the preseason and record doesn't translate to a winning record in the regular season. I just thought, though, we talk so much a lot of times how bad that they do. So, I thought maybe there was something there. But
well, coming off
well, that's it.
3-14, maybe it has a little bit more meaning.
Yeah, no question. Well, that's all I got, Scott. Unless
No, that was good stuff,
you
Chud.
got anything else?
No, we're good. The Browns are they practice today's Wednesday, Thursday, then they're off. The players get off for the weekend, and then they're back Monday, and then crank it up for the regular season. So we'll have a big one. This was a big one, Chud, and we'll have another big one next week, previewing that season opener. We'll do our season predictions, Chud. We'll do our week 1 predictions. So start thinking about that for next week. We'll have plenty to talk about. So
It's a good point. Yeah, season predictions, Super Bowl, Super Bowl teams,
yeah, right,
all that.
yeah,
that'll be good.
Exactly. So cool. So we got that to look forward to. Thanks as always, Chud. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.